Welcome, friends. You are listening to the Mind Body Alchemy podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Miramontes. This is where intuition meets education in the realms of spirituality, fitness, mindset, and more, all to create lasting change. Welcome to the podcast. If you are brand new here, welcome. And if you've been around for a while, thanks for coming back and listening to me again. Today, we're going to talk about something that simply does not get talked about enough, and that is how your past dieting history and past dieting behavior is predicting your future fat loss success and what you need to know to overcome those barriers. Before I dive in, though, I wanted to just invite you to the 3 Pillars for Lifelong Weight Loss live training. Leslie and I are going to be hosting that training, and if you want some information, all you have to do is head to the show notes, click the link. It's all there for you, and it is absolutely free. We would love to see you there. So how does your dieting past, your dieting history, have anything to do with your future success at fat loss? I know that can sound really disheartening when you hear that, because many of us have tried some really dumb diets, and we don't want those stupid mistakes like we make when we're a teenager to affect our future success. We hope that there's some grace and forgiveness for our past stupidity, and we don't have to keep repeating these things. Of course, we can learn our lesson and move on. And that is absolutely true. We get to learn our lessons and move on. Sometimes those lessons are so hard to learn, but we all have to earn our stripes. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't some scars left behind, some consequences left behind. And I'm not talking about going on another diet here, although all that I'm going to talk about today would apply as well. But this happens when you want to start losing weight in a reasonable way, when you just want to stop overeating, stop emotionally overeating, stop relying on food to be this emotional buffer, your only source of pleasure, your only source of fun. And sometimes it feels like it just controls you, that maybe you sit down to dinner and once you start, you can't stop until you're stuffed and you're full. And maybe you're not feeling all that comfortable. So when you recognize, here are my overeating windows and opportunities, here's where I'm most likely overeating, here's where my patterns are, and you want to start changing those things, even though you know you're doing things in a kind and reasonable way, sometimes that dieting past comes back to haunt us. And here's what I mean. Before I really get into the top 3 reasons, I want to tell you that I'm sure you've learned that dieting slows down your metabolism. You've heard that before, and so people need to eat more in order to fix their metabolism and all the things. And while there is some truth to that with some nuance and all kinds of things, it's absolutely normal for your metabolism to adjust downward when you're dieting, when you're losing weight, when you're in a calorie deficit. Outside of a few circumstances, that's not really a problem. And so that's not really what we're talking about here today. I'm not going to be addressing that. That is a whole other episode all on its own. I want to look at the 3 ways your dieting past is coming back to make weight loss feel impossible. And you'll definitely want to hear the 3rd one because you may not have ever thought about it this way before. Number 1 is low confidence. You don't believe you have it in you to change. You failed so many times that you believe that it's only a matter of time before you fall off the wagon and dive headfirst into a full pizza. You've told yourself that story so many times that you go ahead and fail in advance. You save yourself the disappointment because no matter how enthusiastic you are about going after your goals on that day 1, you can't seem to make it past Monday because when you're faced with the decision to get seconds at the dinner table, that voice of low confidence rears its ugly head and says, you might as well just eat what you want right now because you're not going to last this time either. It's so sinister. It's so gross. It's so obnoxious. And when we hear it, we can't unhear it. Many of my clients describe it as this little angel and devil that they have on their shoulder, a little gremlin, a little whisper in their ear that is trying to sabotage them. And because you have started off so strong in the past and fallen flat and maybe even seen a lot of success in the past only to regain your weight and feel like you couldn't regain control over the food and the eating and that kind of thing, because you've experienced that in the past, it knocks down your confidence. It knocks down your willingness to try again because it feels so painful to regain that weight. It feels so painful to have your failure on display in front of other people. And so before anybody notices that you're having some success,
you might as well just blow the whole thing up, right? I definitely have experienced stuff like that. Number 2 is false associations. When you've done a lot of dieting, like I have, especially fad diets and restrictive dieting, or data-based diets like calorie and macro counting, you might experience some false associations on some level. So what is this? False associations is when you decide you want to change your eating habits or start working out, and as soon as you even consider it, you go into sabotage mode. It becomes really hard to enjoy the foods that you used to restrict with the mindset of wanting to lose weight, because if you do, your inner calorie counter tells you that you shouldn't be eating that. It's too fattening. It's not healthy enough. It doesn't have enough protein, and on and on and on it goes, criticizing your choices. And so it makes it really hard to do this in a reasonable way. And you start to lose faith and lose confidence that you're ever going to be able to stop overeating and continue to eat the foods that you actually love and enjoy. You feel so guilty eating these foods when you're in a fat loss phase that you make yourself miserable all over again. But if that's the case, shouldn't it be super easy then to just eat healthy? Nope, because you have the opposite conversation happening too. You can't just guilt yourself into eating better. On the one hand, you don't believe you can lose weight eating the foods that traditional dieting says are bad. But on the other, when you consider ordering food or preparing food, buying food, whatever, eating the food that you would consider healthy and nourishing, suddenly you feel your heart race and you tell yourself that this is the beginning of the end for French fries. Just the thought of buckling down and getting serious about this is exhausting and terrifying. You struggle to order the salad, even if that's actually what you really, really want, simply because you're afraid that that will mean you always have to get the salad moving forward. You will have to do it perfectly once you start because you have collected evidence that you're capable now, that you've started now. And that relates kind of to number 1, where you lose a little bit of confidence that you'll be able to keep it up, that you'll be able to stick to it, which then leads me to number 3, which is your nervous system. When I adopted my dog, Nika Bell, she was terrified of men. I don't know much about her story, only that she was surrendered by a family that was moving and they didn't want to take her, but they took their cats though. And I can only guess that she wasn't well cared for, maybe abused, because when I got that sweet girl, she was underweight, covered in mange, and had a collar on that she had outgrown that made her bark raspy and quiet. It makes me a little bit teary to think about how she was then versus how she is now, because now she is a very healthy weight. She is a sassy girl. She is loud as can be and demanding as hell when she wants something. She is no longer that scared little girl. But for a long time, any man, with the exception of the men and boys that live in my house, all men now, but boys then, that would come near her, any man that would come near her would set her off. She would bark, shake, tuck her tail between her legs. She was so scared. And over time, she learned that grandpa and uncles and friends and other guests weren't going to hurt her. It took a lot of reassuring and soothing and practice to calm her down and get her to this place. Even though none of these men had ever done anything to her, something in her nervous system was trying to let her know that danger was there. She had created an association with men and fear. There was no evidence that these men were evil. In fact, there was plenty of evidence to the contrary, but new evidence isn't necessary to the nervous system when it has the past to pull from. And this is so powerful. This is where a lot of the work really is. Our nervous system does a really good job of cataloging responses related to memory. It's supposed to send signals when something is dangerous. You want your nervous system to warn you if something you have seen before that didn't turn out well is happening again, is lurking around the corner, right? The opposite is also true. When everything is safe and calm, you feel safe and calm because your nervous system is in a rested and regulated state. So what does this have to do with your dieting past? Well, if you have spent years restricting your food, fighting hunger, refusing pleasure, canceling social connections, or avoiding social experiences that you actually really enjoyed in the past, and you have a general fear around food and weight gain, then you may experience some nervous system dysregulation when you consider losing weight. Even though you may not know what's going on consciously, there is something happening physically that is warning you that this is a huge problem. When your nervous system is dysregulated, you'll experience some symptoms of that. You may wake up one day and decide that you're going to make some changes and even start taking some steps to do so. But when you sit down at the table for dinner, for example, we always use dinner as the example because for some reason, everybody seems to be able to knock breakfast right out of the park. But you sit down at dinner and you notice that you have had enough food. You are full, you are satisfied, everything is good. You were able to enjoy your food. It tasted good. We're not really looking for anything here. And yet you have a hard time stopping at that enough comfortable place. Even though you had every intention to do so and you told yourself you were going to and you made that promise and commitment to yourself, it still feels impossible. If you pause in that moment, you might notice that your heart is racing. You may experience a little bit of panic or fear. Maybe you're getting a little hot or shaky. These are all signs that your nervous system is reminding you of how unsafe you felt when you were constantly hungry, deprived, and obsessed with food and your body, and every thought and every interaction was about that. Now you're not only struggling to stop when you're satisfied, but you way overshoot how much you need and eat until you're stuffed. Extra reassurance. Even though that doesn't feel good either, you're proving to your nervous system that you're safe. You have subconsciously concluded that because dieting left you hungry, miserable, and food obsessed, anything short of overeating and eating whatever you want it, is a slippery slope. Let's say that you're out with your family and they decide they want to go for some ice cream. You aren't hungry and you don't want any, not really. In fact, you have ice cream at home, probably a flavor that you prefer. Ice cream isn't scarce. You know you can have it later. There is literally no reason to order it. There is no pressure. Your family's not food pushers. It's just not a thing. And yet you go ahead and order some anyway. Then you choose to eat it, not because the evil sugar demon that controls you is making you do it, but because you think that skipping it would be restrictive. You've said no to foods you love during your dieting days so often that any healthy choice now just stokes that inner rebel fire. Whether you're saying no to seconds or to dessert, your dieting past has left a mark that your nervous system takes very seriously in letting you know that you're at risk. You're unsafe. This is something that I talk to clients about all the time, whether we talk one-on-one or we talk about it in the Unstuffed program or the Masterful program. This kind of stuff keeps coming up because they've associated eating certain foods or skipping certain foods or having overeating behaviors or undereating behaviors or any healthy or unhealthy behavior and exercise habits with their dieting past. And when we can see the diet brain coming in and working and the diet brain chiming in and making decisions for us, then we have our power back. Then we have our ability to make a different decision, to retrain our nervous system the same way we retrained my sweet pup to say, hey, this choice is actually conscious. This one is safe. I'm never going back there. I'm never doing that dumb shit again. I'm never going to go to bed starving and wake up in the middle of the night hungry. I'm not going to restrict my food to the same 6 foods and not have variety again. I'm not going to skip date nights. I'm not going to skip out on my social events and my holidays and things like that. But your subconscious brain doesn't know any of this. It doesn't give a shit about your logical plans and it doesn't care about your weight loss. All it cares about is, are you going to be okay? And if you weren't okay in your dieting past, if you created a lot of struggle and suffering, physical, mental, emotional struggle and suffering, then it is going to do everything in its power to protect you from going back there, as it should. Think about any loved one that you have, anything that you value. If it was in danger, wouldn't you do anything that you could to help, to send out a warning, to try to say, don't do that, let's do it another way, you don't have to create some comfort and some safety? Of course you would. Your nervous system loves you. It's just programmed based on what it has experienced. Your lived experience programs your subconscious, it programs your nervous system, and then all of these are just kind of happening without your permission. The good news is it can be reprogrammed. It can be retrained. Sometimes you'll still get triggered. Sometimes you'll still feel a little bit reactive to certain foods or certain behaviors or certain circumstances and things like that. But you can always bring that conscious, logical brain on board and use that as an opportunity to teach your nervous system that this is safe, this is okay, and we're never going back there again. When you decide to make a change that you have attempted in the past, you don't get a fresh start or a clean slate. Even though you might try to lose weight in a way that's kind and respectful to your body, you might be just trying to stop some overeating, some emotionally overeating, because you know that doesn't feel good anymore. But the body and the nervous system and the mind, they all remember what it was like. They remember what you were like. And because it has to do with food, and a lot of the conversations are about the same thing as when you were dieting, these systems are in place to protect you by reminding you of that past and then sabotaging you, at least that's what it feels like, to prevent a reoccurrence. This is an opportunity to thank our body, to thank those systems, appreciate them for being there, drop into that gratitude, and then redirect. Because you can't demand that your nervous system acts differently than it's been programmed to. The more you demand, the more urgency you feel, the more stress you put on yourself, the more you're going to strengthen those negative associations with the positive behavior changes you're trying to make. So if you drop into gratitude, if you drop into appreciation and self-love and self-respect and kindness and care while you're trying to make these changes, then you're starting to associate new feelings, new emotions with the behaviors. You're soothing the nervous system. You're creating safety. If you don't recognize when your dieting past is showing up in your current behaviors, then you don't stand a chance of seeing future success and weight loss. We don't simply operate from a place of wanting to reach our goals, but we operate from a place of what we deeply and inherently believe about ourselves and our lives. It's easy enough to say that you should just eat a little less, move a little more, but that's such a cop-out and limited understanding about how human behavior change actually works. If it was just about doing those things, then honestly, it would be easy to get results and we wouldn't have the same kind of struggles that we currently do. It's like telling someone who needs more money to just work harder. Of course, we have to work for our money, most of us, but some jobs pay more for a lot less, and work harder is not a simple and universal path to wealth any more than eat less and move more is a simple and universal path to weight loss. You can address the eating habits, the food choices, and optimize the exercise type and frequency and all the things. You can take your multivitamin, drink your water, and get your sleep. All those things are good to pay attention to, but lasting success requires a deeper understanding of why we overeat and self-sabotage in the first place. It will never be because food tastes too good, or that sugar is addicting, or that you're just not strong enough. It's always bigger than that. For those of you who are able to make those changes without digging deep, I appreciate your resolve. I really do. But I highly doubt you're even listening to this podcast, so maybe that's some wasted breath on my part. The rest of us, we have to figure this shit out, and we are better for doing it. That is all I have for you today. Just as a reminder, I am inviting you to a free live training. We are talking about the 3 pillars for lifelong weight loss success. So if you want to join Leslie Hooper and myself in that live training, make sure you hit those show notes, click the link, and get all that information. It is absolutely free. And if you enjoyed this episode, do the cool thing by leaving a rating and writing a review for the podcast. It helps me so much more than you know. A no-cost way to support me in this work is to share, screenshot the episode, share it on social media, and tag me so that I can come by and say thanks. If you have any questions or thoughts on this episode, ideas for episodes in the future, anything you want me to address, questions that you have, I would love to hear from you. Or if you want to know how we can work together one-on-one, my inbox is always open for you. All that contact information is in the show notes, and we'll see you next week. Bye.